This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it is time for Avoid the Maze. And I am so grateful to a number of organizations out there that work with podcasters, especially podmatch.com, because I found today's guest on Podmatch. Her name is Maribel Ortega. And what really encouraged me to make a connection with Maribel is that the first line of her bio, and I'm going to read it because it makes me feel like, hey, I'm not the only one out there. It says, I know how it feels to be muted. Wow. I mean, a big, I don't care if you are male, female, white, black, brown, red, it makes no difference. Depending on the culture that we are in, oftentimes we are feeling muted, but we never use those words. So Maribel, like, what made you decide to put this out there and then make the changes that you did?
Thank you so much for having me. It's really an honor to share here my vision, my story, because I would like to, with showing vulnerability and showing what I've learned, to help others get unmuted. What in my personal case, being muted comes from my personal family situation and my cultural background. I come originally from the Dominican Republic. And I've lived in Europe for the most part of my adult life. And in that society where I grew up in, having a different opinion, saying no, not accommodating to others people's needs, especially how I grew up, that was not okay. So what happens? I mean, and now that I am a coach, I have to learn a lot about how do people learn to behave in a particular way. And even though the circumstances in which they learned that they had to behave that way are not existing anymore, people continue to behave that way. Like, for example, putting others people's needs before yours. And that's something that definitely summarizes what I had to do as a, let's say, as an older child or as a teenager. It's to accommodate to in this case, to my mother's expectations. I was raised by my parents got divorced when I was 7. So basically it was my mother and my brother who lived with her. And I just recently discovered that she has a narcissistic personality disorder. That means if you grew up with a narcissistic parent, that means that their way is the only way. And what that does to you is that thwarts the normal process of the teenager to discover, who am I? What do I like? What do I don't like? What are the things that I enjoy? What are my hobbies? Just your identity, discovering your identity. And if when you are supposed to go through that process, the feedback that you get is, no, you shouldn't feel like that. No, you can't be sad because of that. Come on, just get up. This is what you need to do. Then what you learn through that is, okay, I need to accommodate. When you live with your parents, well, you are dependent on them. In this case, I was dependent on my mother. But the thing is, I'm not anymore. When I was 25, I was not living there anymore. But with most of my relationships, I kept putting others people's needs before mine. My daughter, who is now 20, I had her when I was very young, 25, that automatically also pushes you to put somebody else's, in this case, a small child. In this case, it's normal to put their, and healthy to put their needs before yours because you're the adult. But for someone who hasn't finalized the process of creating their own identity, creating their own personality, it's even a little, it's very easy to put somebody else's needs.
Right.
So the thing is that when I was 30, suddenly I was asking myself, well, actually, what is it that I like? Apart from superficial things like what kind of music do you like, or what color do you like, what moves you, what who are you, what is the purpose of your life? And that's when that process for me started, and that is something that is very liberating. But I can totally understand when someone avoids confrontation, avoids having difficult conversations, says yes because it's just what they know. And because they have probably learned that saying no is connected to a feeling of guilt. In my case,
Yep.
that was the connection.
Sure, absolutely. You've touched on so many different areas that I can so totally relate to. And I'm sure our listeners can as well. When you talked about, it was your mother's personality and it had to be her way. As parents, sometimes we think that's our job, okay, to tell our children what they like, what they don't like. And I remember my mother many times would say to me, well, of course you like this. I like it. And I look at her and go, well, just because you like it, I'm supposed to like it. But I was afraid to really say it that way. And if I told her I didn't like whatever it was, I could see the disappointment on her face because that was her way of trying to communicate with me and make me happy. The other thing that I heard you say is us accommodating to others. And again, I know my generation, I was brought up, if you make everybody else happy, guess what, Karen? You'll be happy too. And you and I now know that's not true, because as you're making everybody else happy, you're forgetting about yourself. And so you've got to find what makes you happy. And I will tell our listeners, it took me until my 60th birthday to finally shake myself up and say, wait a second, what do I like? Why am I in this marriage? Why am I, still, parenting to an adult child? And I had to look at it all. And I figured out why I was still in my marriage. There was some greatness there, but I hadn't identified it. And that's what I think you're talking about, that we have to dig deep inside ourselves and say, hey, what's it about me? And that's what you did when you were 30, even though you had a 5-year-old child that you had to take care of.
Yes, indeed. I think that what you just mentioned of pleasing other people and fulfilling others people's needs and thinking that's the way that I will be happy, that's key. That's a key insight, because what I have found in myself and also in the people that I work with, what it creates is resentment inside
Yes.
of you, resentment towards the world, everybody else, because at some point you're just angry, even at yourself for not giving yourself the the space and the time to fulfill what you need. And if we remember when you get on a plane and they teach you, in the emergency, please put first your own mask,
Right.
and then to put that of the child. Why? Because if you can't breathe, then you can't help anybody else.
Right.
And I think that is a great image for this idea of helping others only when you have helped yourself. And to make it more specific, to take time for yourself, to
Absolutely.
on a walk, or to do your exercise, or if you need to meditate, or if working is something that fulfills you, then to take time to do that. And if you have small children, then to send them to daycare, or to not, or get a babysitter, to not feel guilty because of that. That way you're a better person, a better mother or father, better at everything.
Absolutely. So this is something, like I said, many of us are going through. And I think especially since the pandemic, I think many of us have like woken up and said, wait a second, life around me has changed. Maybe it's time for me to make a change. And it's not for our family to tell us, or our business colleagues, to shake us up and say, hey, Karen, you need to change what you're doing. Because usually when somebody else asks you to do that, it falls flat.
Yeah.
But we have to look inside ourselves. And before I left corporate America, which was about 10 years ago, we used to have a Friday morning meeting. And in that Friday morning meeting, we'd go around the room and our manager would say, name your favorite song, or name your favorite movie, or what's your favorite food. And every time it came to me, I would get angry, because to me, I didn't know what those favorites were, because I was so busy taking care of everybody else, and then listening as everybody was talking about their favorite food or movie or whatever, and feeling the resentment that I haven't had time to even think about these things. And it put me into a real state of depression. I ended up leaving corporate America. And it was then that I was able to sit back, look out my window, any window in my house, and find something pleasurable. And then from looking out the window, I went outside and looked at those same things. And I've been broadening my horizons ever since. It's not easy. And I'm sure you know that. After, like you said, it was age 25 when you finally had to say, maybe I'm not happy. Maybe I have to do something different. That's a long time to be taking care of other people.
Yes, absolutely. I think what you mentioned is also being grateful for what you do have, because the thing is, life is not black and white. It's mainly shades of different colors,
right?
And things are not right or wrong. You just have to find what works for you. And as you mentioned also, nature, wherever you are, if you can open the window or just go outside, nature is there, and that can give you grounding, and we can be grateful for that, and to be in touch with our emotions. Because I mean, what is a sunset other than life happening and you appreciating it with the emotions that your mind can create. One key thing that helped me start on this journey of being grateful and finding out my identity disconnected to Maribel as a wife, Maribel as a friend, a daughter, a sister, a mother, whatever, a coach, just like disconnected to all these things that could define me, and find out, but who is she without all these things? Who is this woman? Was finding out that there is more than just one voice in your head happening.
Right.
And some of them, or particularly one that I like to call the inner critic, is that voice that we heard so many times. In my case, is my mother's voice. Oh, if you gain 5 pounds, you're not going to look good. You're never going to find a boyfriend like that. Or, oh my God, look at your hair. Look at those curls. You need to straighten the curls, especially like in the respect of my, how I look. And that's actually not what I think. I think my curls are okay. And if I wait a little bit more, I mean, I have to like it, not somebody else. And if I am okay with the way that I look, then other people will like that too. You know what I mean? So finding that internal negative discourse that is like a judge that is criticizing you, and that is black and white. Either you do it perfectly or you're a loser. Either you make it or you don't. Whenever you hear that voice that is it's highly critical and speaks in a way that you would never speak to your best friend, then you know that's the inner critic. And once you pay attention to that, what you need to do, and what works for me, is to take distance from it and to label it. Oh, that's it. Oh, there goes the inner critic again, trying to demotivate me, or whatever it is that it's doing. And when you label it and you say, that's the inner critic, that's not me, I don't treat myself that way, then it starts becoming like a separate entity. It never goes. It's always there. But if you start exercising that activity of labeling and pushing it down and controlling it, I mean, you could also say like, oh, this voice is too loud, I need to turn the volume down. Then you start creating more space for other voices. For example, your inner mentor. We think so much of, oh, we need external mentors or people that we can look up to, but those are good examples to have, but they're not you. And there's a really nice visualization that I do with my clients, and that is visualizing your 20-year older self. And for everyone, it's a beautiful experience. That's the inner mentor visualization. And with that, what you encounter is an older, wiser version of you. And this older, if it's, I especially work with women, this older, more wiser woman is always cool, relaxed. She knows how to deal with things, doesn't get angry. And once you encounter this inner mentor, which is already inside of you, you just don't have a conversation with her all the time because her voice is very low right now. You can already start asking her questions. If you have a dilemma or if you have a tough decision to make, you can ask. In the end, it's just asking yourself. It's just asking your intuition of the version of you that is aligned in the logic and in the emotions with your inner values. And when you can ask that older version, how would you deal with this? What would you do? Then you start already today becoming that version of yourself. And I think working with these two ideas of the inner critic and the inner mentor, trying to lower the volume of the inner critic and putting up the volume of the inner mentor, is something that has helped me a lot.
Well, and I think it's important for us all to understand that, hearing these voices does not make us mentally ill. Okay. So many people in the past always brought that up. Oh, you're hearing voices. Oh, we better get you to a doctor. You need medication. No, those inner voices are the thoughts and the memories and the words that you've heard before. And sometimes they are great voices because they can keep you out of danger. And I've noticed that myself. It's like, where did that come from? Oh, yeah. It's like, telling a child, not to touch the stove because it's hot. You tell them so many times that next time, maybe 20 years later, they're near something very warm and I remember, don't go there.
The body remembers.
Exactly. But, what I think is most important is that we be honest with ourselves. And so many of us are not. And I know that was me. Okay. I kept telling myself I was happy. I was okay. And all of a sudden one day I woke up and I was totally depressed. And if it wasn't for my younger son to say to me, Mom, this is not you. What is wrong? And I sort of laid into him. It was like, I'm still taking care of you. I'm taking care of your father. And it just all rolled off my tongue. And he looked at me and he goes, then don't take care of us. We're adults. And it was like, wow, that was like, where did this come from? And I realized they took care of their own needs. Okay. I wasn't taking care of mine. So I want everyone to understand that, maybe you can't do it alone initially. Maybe it is good to reach out to a Maribel who is a coach who can help you find the confidence inside yourself. I think working with others, especially who've been through something like this, is so important. So one question I have for you, Maribel, is when you started to make these changes and you developed your coaching business, what did your family think? Because obviously you made some big changes.
Yes. The first, I made internal changes that reflected then in the outside. My family, my own family was very supportive because they saw that I was feeling better, and at the same time they learned to be more responsible for themselves. So in the end, I really like what you said about being honest. In the end, when you say what you really need, because one thing that I used to do is to, because of this experience with my mother, I developed this very this sense of knowing what someone is going to say, or if they're gonna like it or not. So I was already predicting what she wanted me to say, and I delivered that, right? So that I could have my peace as a teenager. This has helped me as a coach because I can see how someone feels and suggest something, even if they haven't voiced it yet. On that side, that's really good. But with outside of the coaching, if we were going to do something with my family, and everybody said, oh, I want to go riding a bike, or I want to go to do this or whatever, I would never say what I really wanted to do. I would just say, oh, well, whatever you guys like, I'm fine. And actually, no, I do have an opinion, and I do want something, or don't want something. If they said we want to go to this restaurant, now what I say is, well, okay, then you guys go, because it's not worth it. I'm not interested in eating that, and I'll just say here. And at the beginning, I thought, well, I didn't even think, it was just automatic. I'll say yes to whatever they say.
Right.
And then I would not be really satisfied, because that's not really what I wanted. Or maybe I didn't even go into thinking, what do I really want? I went to therapy. I had years of therapy to work with this. And if that's where you're at, that you really haven't even let yourself have that internal conversation, what is it that I really want, then my suggestion is, that's how I learned it. I remember my therapist telling me, Maribel, before you start taking difficult decisions, or thinking about, where your business is going to go, and what are you going to do with your marriage or with your children or whatever, because I started questioning everything,
Right.
just like you said, right? Am I living the life that I really want? Start first, but that was scary to be questioning all these big things. Start first with, do you want ice cream, or do you want a piece of cake? What do you want for breakfast? Do you want tea or coffee? And that's how I started. And I remember one particular situation, because I've always been like watching my weight, and what do I eat, and not too much calories, blah, blah. And then I remember having lunch one day, and I just sat down with almonds that I wanted to eat. And then my husband told me, is that what you're gonna have for lunch? Why don't you make yourself like a proper lunch? And I just looked at him from the side, and I said, well, thank you for your observation. That's what I really want to eat right now, period. And I remember that at that time he looked at me like, oh, this is new. I've never heard this from her before. But when you start doing that with these little things, you start practicing being confident, and you start practicing being audacious. And creating confidence is action. Confidence isn't, you don't talk about confidence. You do confidence. Confidence is a verb. You have to do stuff, and you focus on the doing. You don't focus on the result. The result is really not that important. Focus on the doing, and doing things, even if they are a little bit scary, because it's in doing that and realizing, well, I didn't die. Nobody else died. I survived that, and it was okay. Then you take the next step and the next step, and that's how you slowly build your confidence.
Well, again, it's not always easy, but there are baby steps to do it.
Yeah.
And we didn't get into this negativity of life overnight. It was a process. And even when we want to make the changes, not everything needs to change, because there are some areas of our inner self that we have worked on without even realizing it. And that's one of the things that I saw when I started going through my changes. It was like, you know what? I don't have to change everything. I know where I want to be different. But I didn't put expectations on myself to say, hey, I want to be different by next month, next year. It was like, it's a work in progress. And are there days that I slip off the wagon, so to speak? Absolutely. This past weekend was a little stressful for me. And My youngest son is moving next Sunday of all days on Mother's Day, and he's moving out of state. And this weekend, I kept looking at the clock thinking next week at this time, he's going to be packing. Next week at this time. And I was looking at all the negativity. And it was about midday yesterday that I thought to myself, you know, he's moving 6 hours away. I've already been there. I've made the drive. It's easy to do. And even when he's been living at home, most of the time he's living behind closed doors. So most of our conversations are on the phone. And I started finding those little bits of positivity, saying to myself, yeah, it's going to work. Oh, am I going to cry when I see him get in the car and drive off? Absolutely. But I'm not going to be that mother who says, no, don't do it, because I did it when I was even younger than him. So there are some really good things inside of all of us. And all we have to do is just start expanding on them and not be so hard on ourselves, like you said before, saying the things to ourselves that we would never accept from anybody else. So if our listeners want to find you, what is the best way to find Maribel? Because I'll tell you, Maribel, your type of coaching is so needed for so many of us.
Thank you. Thank you so much. There are two ways. If you want to read about me and about the work that I do, you can go to my website. It's maribelortega.com. And if you want to see me live, I give weekly or every 2 weeks a live masterclass, and you can and it's a free 90-minute live masterclass. You can register on managerstoleaders.com. And that way you can interact with me. It ends with a Q&A, so you can ask any questions and I will help you out.
And for those of you who said, I missed that, don't worry, it's in the show notes, because we know how important it is for each of us to find that connection. And Maribel, I'll tell you, I'm so glad for you that you found what is meaningful to you. And I'm sure you were a great mom to your daughter, who you said is 20 years old now, a young adult, and probably soon to fly the nest herself. So the best of luck to you, and happy upcoming Mother's Day.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here. And yeah, happy Mother's Day to you too.
Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.